Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining Double Radius today for our overview webinar of new products from Ubiquiti Networks. Our presenter today is Caleb Nauer, who serves as the Technical Services Director here at Double Radius. And for a little background, Caleb is a Ubiquiti certified trainer, and he regularly teaches Ubiquiti admin certification classes right here at our headquarters in Charlotte. When he's not teaching classes, he's supporting our team and helping to engineer our customers' wireless networks. Maybe some of yours who are listening today. As we have a big crowd today and want to specifically address each and every question, here's our plan. Throughout the presentation, please jot down any questions that you may have. And at the conclusion of the webinar, enter your questions on the quick survey that will pop up on your screen. Our team will make sure to review each and every question entered on those surveys and to get a reply back to you. And that being said, I'll turn it over now to Caleb to get us started.
All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get this party started. So again, my name is Caleb Nauer. I am Technical Service Director for Double Radius. I've been doing this a little while, familiar with the Ubiquiti platform since it began, and hope to share a little bit of knowledge with you about some new products that I've recently released and some things that have been out for a little bit, but maybe just now started shipping or we've had a lot of questions about or so on and so forth. Oh, it would help if I actually clicked on my computer the right way. So here's the game plan. What we're going to do is we are going to talk first about the new products in the operator space. Now, when I say operator space, I mean primarily the fixed wireless internet service provider space. And we're going to be talking about the new LTE, the point-to-multipoint products that are coming out. Also, the new AirFiber 60, their 60 gig point-to-point link set up for the AirFiber. Once we're done with that, we're going to go to the Unify platform, talk about the Dream Machine, the Dream Machine Pro, the new family of switches, what I commonly refer to as the Gen 2 switches. Some new additions to the UAP family line, which I think will be interesting for you guys to pick up on. We're going to talk about the ULTE or the LTE WAN failover from Unify. We're going to talk about the UBB, the 60 gig Unify bridge and building bridge link. And depending on time, if we've got some more time, we may pick up some new little things here or there. We may talk about some accessories. We'll see how it goes. What we're not going to be discussing right now are things that are primarily in EA or early access, their beta program. We can't really talk about it. Plus, a lot of stuff there is so new that we don't really want to talk about it because there's so much flux and change, as you would expect in such a program. Now, I used to spend a lot of time, in that field, a lot of alpha testing, a lot of beta testing, so on and so forth. As I've grown and gotten more tied up in projects, I haven't had a lot of time to do that sort of stuff. So it's some really interesting information there. If you're interested in some more of that early access thing, go to community forums, get signed up on beta. There's a ton of discussions online about how to do that, and you can get first sight in some products. Now, as Chad mentioned, we will be doing the QA and the survey at the end. There's a whole whack of people on this presentation. We want to make sure that we get to everyone's questions, we answer them properly, and get you the feedback that you need. So once we're done, we're going to compile all this, start working the list. One of our reps will be in touch with you soon to answer your questions or any more questions that may come up from that conversation. Now, when I do webinars, anyone who's heard me get up here and ramble about for a while, pretty laid back. Obviously, when you see the quality of my slides, you will realize I'm definitely more on the tech and product side and not so much the graphic artist side. So I will apologize in advance for some of the simplicity of my slide layouts, but I try to keep them simple. I try to keep them just as a general outline. This is a discussion, a conversation I like to have, granted, a bit of a one-way conversation, but as my wife likes to point out, one-way conversations are my favorite kind of conversation, or something like that. I don't know, wouldn't really listen. So anywho, let's go ahead and get started. So when we talk about the operator space, again, we're talking about fixed wireless internet service providers for the most part. Now, there's a lot of applications to this type of gear and a lot of cross-market, use and everything else, but we're going to focus on the internet service providers. Now, why are we doing that? It's all about the sort of scope and scale of this new product line, which they're calling LTU, falls into. So when we're talking about LTU, it basically stands for the long-term Ubiquiti vision of where they're going to take their point-to-point and point-to-multipoint platforms. This product line that they're working on is in its infancy. There's a handful of products we'll discuss in a second. But this is where that they are going to be taking this platform over the next several years. It's really exciting to see this stuff hit the field, hit the real world. start getting put up and start servicing people with. Now, what makes the LTU generation different from everything that they've done before in this space is this platform is custom built from the ground up, all on their own custom silicon. They're not relying on a Wi-Fi chipset to use as a common core and then build up upon. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. You know, all the AirMax stuff, at least, air fiber has all been from the ground up. But the AirMax stuff, what everyone's been using for so many years, from the original nano stations, BG devices way back in the day, the dark before times where we all had to walk uphill both ways in the snow, to the M series, to the AC series, which has been going like gangbusters for years. All of these products were built on an Atheros or Qualcomm Wi-Fi chipset that followed the 802.11 standards, whether it be BG or whether it be N or whether it be AC. These chips all follow these core standards. Now, for Ubiquiti in its development, its life cycle, the products they were trying to serve, the markets they were serving, this was fantastic. You know, the biggest thing that came from this, you know, just setting aside performance and setting aside everything else, was the economies of scale that allowed Ubiquiti to develop these products on these cores, sell them at a super fantastic price, and allowed all these operators to start building this stuff out. And it works really well, and it's still a great platform today. You know, there's plenty of reasons to use it, and there's tons of deployments that are going to be built with AC stuff, especially over the next years, depending on your scope and scale of what you're trying to do. Now, however, when we start talking about LTU, though, taking that next step, that next gen, that next, you know, big performance push, was built from the ground up to not only work around the limitations of what the standards-based systems can do, but build from years and years of history and knowledge and learning, and deliver a platform that just doesn't, you know, blows everything else they've ever done out of the water. So let's talk a little bit about that. So because they're building this from the ground up, they've got a lot of freedom to do some much more advanced things than what you would see with a Wi-Fi based platform. For instance, you know, their first thing they're touting is the ability to use 12x modulation or 4096 QAM modulation. You know, they're able to push through a multi-point platform, a gig or more of capacity in some future firmware updates. This stuff already exists to some extent. We'll talk about it in just a sec, but they're able to do 12x is 4096 QAM is a tremendous amount of data. Okay, we're talking about 21.2 bits per second per hertz, 2 million packets per second. Well, in terms of just raw, you know, performance, that's fantastic. But really, what we're angling for here is not so much raw performance, but we're talking about efficiency. Okay, efficiency, especially in these 5 gig unlicensed bands that everyone's using for these markets, is incredibly important. Because these bands, as we're adding more and more stuff to it, and the speeds that we're needing to push through, and the capacities that we're needing to push through, and the client loads that we're needing to push through increase over time, we need to make more and more efficient use of the limited spectrum that's there. The amount of spectrum that we're able to use is the bottleneck. By using a more efficient platform, by taking the LTU and building on whatever they've had before, making it more efficient, making it able to handle more users, handle more capacity, tune individual user performance and things like that, that gives us the ability to run more efficient networks, more profitable networks, serve more people, so on and so forth. So like I said, they get this increased performance and efficiency by using higher order modulation rates, spectral efficiency that's better than anything they've done before, you know, especially when compared to definitely Wi-Fi systems, but even the standard air fiber systems. Packet per second count's amazing. They've also built not just the custom silicon part and the advancements of their underlying Mac and everything else, but they've also been able to learn a lot from previous generations and apply and enhance these systems even more. So, for instance, more advanced RF filtering. You know, they really got into filtering with the Prism series of Gen 2 ACAPs, and that was great. And it's worked really, really well. This new LTE platform, though, they're able to take that and add so many more enhancements to that. Things like AirView, the RF spectral analysis. It is a super effective tool to be able to look at the spectrum that you're using in real time and historical without breaking the link to show you, hey, what's my spectrum look like, not only on the band that I'm using, but across the entire band. You know, it helps with channel planning, helps with troubleshooting interference, it helps with all these other factors. There's some other additions, and there's a whole list of stuff this platform does. These are the main ones. I like to point out the split, transmit, and receive frequencies. Again, because this is custom guts on the inside of this thing, they can start adding some of these additional features. So, for instance, split transmission and receive frequencies. What they can do is say, all right, your noise that interferes with your devices is what's blocking your receive. Now, you might have a real noisy band on one side, but the other side of it's pretty clear, right? So one frequency might be busy on one side and clear on the other, and vice versa. Well, by being able to split your transmit and receive frequencies, what this allows you to do is to transmit through the noisy side on one end, receive on the clear side on the other, and vice versa. So it gives you the ability to work more efficiently, is our key term here, in these congested bands that we're all faced with. So there's a number of other features. I'm going to show you some sites and stuff where there's some more information. You can do some more digging. But again, efficiency here, name of the game. Now, the LTE platform in and of itself is not entirely new. From point to point, they've been using the first LTE platform, the AF5X HD, for quite a bit of time now. Performance on that platform has been great. Stability's great. At this point, it is basically the de facto unlicensed 5 gig point-to-point link in this market space. So that has worked really, really well for people. And now we're taking all of this performance and everything they've learned from that and putting into the point-to-multipoint systems. So you'll see there's currently a number of products released. There's the LTE Rocket, which, as all the other rockets were in the past, is the base station for these point-to-multipoint systems. You've got the LTE Pro. That is a high-performance CPE device. You've got the LTE Lite, which looks like a nano, or excuse me, the Pro kind of looks like that nano station, or excuse me, nano beam look. The Lite looks kind of like that nano station look. And then the LR, which is a longer range but lower cost device. Now, these are the first few products that are coming through with these series. We expect to see a lot more products over the next short amount of time here. A lot of really exciting things coming. On top of that, these things have been built from the ground up to be controlled by UNMS, Ubiquiti Network Management System. Works really well. It's got all the cool features like your management radio, so you can program them with apps on your phone, so on and so forth. So a couple of things I do want to point out here real quick is if you're looking for a bit more graphical goodness versus what I can typically, hold on. Excuse me, technical issues. Computer. So they do a much better much better job of writing all this out, showing you some features. They've got some animations here, some cool comparisons, like I said, about your spectral efficiencies versus the other platforms. There's your explanation of how your higher order modulation arrays can provide more traffic and stuff. Here's some pictures down here, the various products. There's your Rocket, there's your LTE Pro, here's your LTE Lite and your LR. So similar sort of form factors to what we're used to before. You can use the Rockets with existing sectors and stuff like that are in place. We're not having to redesign all the antennas. The AC sectors work fine. If you want to do dishes, you can use air fiber dishes and stuff like that with the other products. So, not reinventing every aspect of things means that you're able to capitalize on the efficiency of your form factors, your third-party accessories, so on and so forth. The other thing I want to point out, and they're going to share all these slides, so you'll have all these links here, is for those of you that are kind of just getting into this and you want some more information about the differences between air fiber, LTU, AirMax, so on and so forth, if you go to their help desk, there's actually they've done an amazing job of writing all these help articles up. And if you click down the air fiber, LTU, frequently asked questions, you see there's a bunch of sort of general questions people have when they start talking about this platform. So GPS syncs, latencies, SNMP support, cross-model support, so on and so forth. So a lot of really good information right here, and this will be continuing to be built on like the rest of their help articles. So really good resource there. I always send the new hires and the people that are just getting started in this to these help desk pages, and it's a really great opportunity and resource for you to learn from. So that's LTE. We could go on and on about that, but we will continue because we've got a lot of material to cover here. So next, we're going to talk about that's a new product that just recently started moving in the operator space, is the AirFiber 60. So what is that? So it is a 60 gigahertz point-to-point radio that has all the AirFiber quality that you've gotten used to over the years, right? So this is the first sort of heavy-duty professional 60 gig platform built with the attention to detail and quality that you've come to expect from AirFiber. Those of you not familiar with the 60 gig band, it's a very high frequency unlicensed band, so it means anybody can use it. It's very low interference, even though it is unlicensed, it's very low interference, and you have a ton of frequency reuse options. I always tell people and it trips them up, I'm like, hey, you know what the greatest thing about 60 gig band is? Like, what's that? I'm like, it goes not very far at all. They're like, well, it sounds like a total bummer. Well, on one hand, it is, because it keeps your link distances short, up to 2 kilometers. Typically, you want to run less than that. But because it's low powered, very focused beam, oxygen attenuation that you run into this band, what this means is not only does it keep your total link distance short, but the big thing is it keeps your interference propagation short. So for instance, if I'm talking about a 5 gig AP that's up on a tower and I've got it broadcasting out, that noise is going to go for miles and miles and miles, right? This is going to cut off at a very, very short distance, which means because of that, you're not going to be picking up interference from miles and miles away. They're going to be very small, they're going to be very pocketed, they're going to be very tightly focused, which means you can balance a lot of these in one small geographic area and not have interference issues. So that makes it fantastic for feeding short links, high capacity short links between things, feeding micropops. We see a lot of this going into that sort of field, so on and so forth. It is good for a gigabit per second or a little bit more. Like I said, up to 2K, probably a little bit shorter range than that, typically what you're going to be doing in the real world. It does have a 5 gigahertz failover radio built into it as well. So if you experience really bad rain fades or you're pushing the links a little bit further than maybe what you should, if that rain does fade out, then it does have that 5 gig radio to fail back into. You see a little picture here, what it looks like. I always like to tell people, you don't have to use these stabilizing arms, but if you're doing longer distant links, I would definitely recommend you do. They just kind of clip in there, they come with it. So, but that's the AirFiber 60. So again, really high capacity, short distance, amazing frequency reuse. It's got GPS sync as well if you need to use that. And like I said, the AirFiber quality that we've all come to expect over time. So you're feeding micropops, or you're feeding short links, you need a lot of high capacity. Sometimes a lot of these links that you're looking for, you need a gig, and there's other options available out there for that from Ubiquiti. I have 24 or HD, maybe 24, but sometimes, you have minimum link distance, or you have form factor issues or size and weight constraints and stuff like that. This is an excellent application. Definitely something you should look at. You go to their site, you can get all the full specs to see sizes and weights, so on and so forth. So that basically are the two main things I want to hit on the operator space: the LTE, your point-to-point multi-point, the unlicensed 5 gig band, and then our new AirFiber 60. So that said, let's move on. The rest of this kind of conversation, I want to focus on the Unify platform. So the Unify platform has gone from the very basic UAP in the way, way dark times of, I think, 2009, I believe, which is now a decade ago, which kind of makes me cringe the more I think about it. But yeah, it's been around a little while. It has gone from a couple of products to an entire suite of solutions, focusing on the enterprise space, SMBs, a lot of different markets that are being used in this. The sales pitch and the product explanation of the Unify platform used to be a lot easier. I could be a lot lazier about describing it because I'm like, hey, they got some APs and they're awesome. But then now we've got switches, and now we've got gateways, and now we've got these new hybrid models. We've got different platforms that do a lot of different things. So what we're going to talk about are these platforms in the Unify system that fit in either with existing systems, or they are a way of bringing multiple parts of Unify into a single core. And for instance, one of these is the UDM, or the Unify Dream Machine. So what is this? Basically, what they've done with the Unified Dream Machine is they've taken a number of the Unify components and unified them together. Waka waka, tip your waitresses. So what they've got here is they've taken the USG, the Unified Security Gateway, which is basically your router. They've combined it into one box with an access point, HD, multi-user MIMO, 802.11ac Wave 2, little 4-port switch on the LAN, 1 port for your internet feed, and also the controller, and they've put it all into one small, easy to deploy form factor. Now, really what they're gunning for with this platform is the SMBs in the residential, especially higher end residential builds, where you are wanting to build this stuff out. You don't need a ton of access points. You don't need a ton of switches. You can do it with one or a couple of devices, but you want to stay in the Unify ecosystem. Okay, there's a lot of reasons you want to stay in the Unify ecosystem. A lot of it has to do with cloud management. You can reach all these networks from one spot. You've got the Unified Network app, which is fantastic. I really enjoy using this app, so on and so forth. But there's a lot of really good reasons to not only deploy your Unify platform in these residential and SMB environments for management, or excuse me, for performance, which is going to be fantastic, but also management, easy use, training, so on and so forth. So you put this in, it handles as your base AP, your router, your switch, your gateway, your controller. And if you need to add additional parts to this system, you can. If you want to add switches to it, to the LAN ports, you can do that. If you want to expand with other UAPs, which we're going to look at here in a few, you can do that as well. I actually just put up one of these in my house this weekend. I managed to liberate one from our warehouse very sneakily and put it up and set up about as easy as you can get. You plug it in, feed it online, or excuse me, feed it with a circuit that goes online, pull a DHCP, whip out the app, connect to it, bang, 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 it's connected to the cloud, you're configured, you're off to the races. So really easy setup, really good performance. I actually use the beacon along with that. We're going to talk about that in a second, but like I said, personal use, it's good to go. I've got it set up on the cloud account. I can hit it from my app. So wherever I am, if my wife is like, hey, I'm having some sort of issue, I can look and be like, oh, your connection's really bad, so on and so forth. Because she's, way back in the corner because I'm too lazy to run extra APs or something like that. So this makes it for really easy use, really clean installation. Been very, very happy with that so far. All right, so that's the Unified Dream Machine. Again, these are pretty small installations you're using it for. If you want something a little bit bigger now, you can go to the Unified Dream Machine Pro. Now, it's the same concept, but it's scaled for more bigger deployments. Your enterprise, your bigger SMBs, where you're going to need, multiple devices. So in its core, it has the same USG type of infrastructure. It's got your router and stuff. Now, it is scaled up with a lot more speed and security options because it has bigger processors and everything else. There's a lot more stuff that it can filter through with that. It's got a lot better performance. I'd like to say both of these, the UDM and the UDM Pro, the processing performance of these devices are a lot higher than the previous generations of USGs, right? Not in terms, just in terms of raw throughput without having to do anything complex, it's neighborhood. But the big improvement is they've added in a lot of stuff so you can do your IDS and IPS, your security features for looking at your traffic, looking for intrusion detection or intrusion prevention. These things process through the IDS and IPS so much more efficiently and so much faster that you're not taking a toll and knocking out your total throughput like you were before. So previous generations, you could push a gig through USG, but you turn this on and it'll cut your throughput down to 100 megs or 250 megs or something like that. This little guy right here, even with IPS, IDS, is still rated for about 850 megs of raw throughput, which is fantastic. This one, I think was 3.5 gigs, but I wouldn't testify that in the court. I have to look at the spec sheet again. Plenty fast. Now you're probably thinking, okay, well, who cares? A gig's a lot of speed, but we are seeing more and more areas that are turning up with fiber to the home or DOCSIS fiber drop turnups and stuff like that, where 1 gig internet connections are a thing and people are needing these higher capacities. So I digress. Back to the Unify Pro or the UDM Pro here. So like I said, same concept, but the USG on this beefier. You'll see some options for some of the security features that are only for this one, just because of the additional processing power, so on and so forth. Some really cool features in there that they're building onto constantly as they take a big focus on this. It has 2 physical dual LAN ports. So one of them's RJ45 gigabit port, one of them's an SFP plus port, which is important. Now, if you have 2 copper interfaces, you can always take that SFP plus, put in a copper SFP if you want to, that'll work as well. LAN ports, you've got 8 RJ45 gigabit ports, you got 1 SFP plus. Typically what you're gonna do, if you want additional ports on this, you're gonna put in a unify switch, which we'll talk about in a second, feed it with that SFP plus port. It's going to get you 10 gigs to your switches, and then you can go from there. In addition, it is rack mountable. So you can see here in this picture that it is built to go in a rack. There's a hard drive bay built into it. So you can add an additional hard drive. They sell an 8 terabyte hard drive that you can put in there, 3.5 inch. It also supports 2.5 inch drives, primarily for Unify Protect. So this is the biggest platform where if you're running Protect, you can have it tie into this. It's got the Protect software built in for it and everything. It's got some new platforms they're looking to spin up here in the near future, EA stuff we're not going to get into. But this is a base for all that. It does support some upcoming power options. They've got some power things that we're going to show you here in a little bit that are still technically EA, but it's all over the main production website. So I think we're okay talking about that because they advertise it easily. So we'll look at that. But it does support that, the power failovers and redundancy and stuff. And the one thing I do like to point out, the one differentiation from here that's not maybe necessarily obvious, there's no AP built into this, and that's fine. Typically, you don't want an AP built into something that's meant to be rack mount because you're putting your access point in a metal cage, probably not doing you a lot of good. So I do like to point this out, though, when people start looking around. You will need an external access point, but luckily there's tons of options, and we'll get into that here shortly. So that's the UDM Pro. This just now started shipping. So hitting the field, tons of people all over excited. They're working through some of those intro kinks and everything, like every single thing that's ever shipped ever is going. But they're being resolved really quick. Forums are super happy, the external sources and stuff. So this is gonna be a really nice platform working, this enterprise market. Next on the agenda here, we're going to talk about their new Gen 2 switches. So they've released a whole new family of switches, colloquially called Gen 2 switches. And what it is done is basically are an evolutionary enhancement of the switch platforms they had before. So this is the first big hardware divergence they've come from the edge switch platform. So these are built to be Unify switches from the ground up. They have a lot of port options and so on and so forth. So if we look at this, the first thing they point out, and which is a really nice improvement, is they've improved the cooling through the system and the noise. And the noise factor comes from your fans. So they've re-engineered all the cooling, active and passive cooling on this, meant to keep these switches quieter, which is a really nice enhancement. They now support PoE++ or 802.3bt PoE support. That's to power up the big boy access points that need a ton of power. So your XGs, your big Batwing XG family, UWB, those need a lot more power than 3F and 3AT. Previous generation switches could push. These have BT ports on them, depending on the model, to push these bigger access points. You've got a cool little LED display, little touch screen there on the left-hand side you can see. They've got that on the UDM Pro as well. That's really neat to see info, look at stuff on there. It does support the power redundancy. We're going to look at in 1 second. They've streamlined the number of SKUs. There were a ton of switch SKUs with the Gen 2 switches. They have kind of streamlined that a bit and condensed some things. Not saying they're not going to add a lot more SKUs in the near future. Couldn't really tell you one way or the other, but there are some things coming. Also, because they're bigger, beefier processors in these, we will start seeing in the future some layer 3 capabilities, according to what we're saying now. So this feature a lot of people have been asking for on the Unified Switch platform. So we're excited to see that. Now, again, as their marketing department does a lot better job of sketching things out than I do, well, let's just go and take a gander. So if you go to switchui.com/Gen2, what you're going to see This is a beautiful page right here. Okay, so they're like switches, wires, yeah, cool. We figured out how that's worked by now. They've got some more conversation here about the cooling, new airform. They've got some comparisons here, various temp loads, the sound levels, the background noises, so on and so forth. You see this Gen 2 switch is much quieter. So when you spend a lot of time hanging out by racks of these, you will appreciate that, or especially if these are going into some smaller places, you don't have a traditional rack room or something where you can store the stuff off, the silence, the noise reduction is greatly appreciated. Got some ports, blah, blah, blah. We've mentioned this, PoE, PoP plus port, SFP plus, pretty standard. Here's this redundant power system and stuff. And again, this is all on public site. The products aren't quite ready yet, but they're pushing this really big because they've got some novel applications. They're dealing with multi-power supply, their smart power series, and so on and so forth. This is all discussed in their community. You can go see all this. But again, this is all on their public website here. Pretty neat setup, gives you a lot of redundant power options for these biggers, making for bigger, beefier enterprise style networks. You can see here's the touch screen, some of the information it can display here, which is really neat. And then a real handy feature is they've got kind of a product comparison matrix because there's a lot of SKUs to keep up with, you know, between the Gen 1 switches and the Gen 2s. So if you're looking for that, and you want to see who's got PoE++, which is your BT support, you click on that and it tells you it's these two models here. Awesome. You know, which ones have SFPs? These here. You know, which ones are non-PoE? None, they're all PoE switches at this time. So nice comparison there. And I think if you look for Unify switch comparison at site help.ubiquiti.com, I should have pulled this up earlier. Here we go. Unify switch model comparison on the help desk. Again, help desk, time to get info here. They've got a whole big breakdown. So if you want to compare current SKUs versus the previous generation SKUs, all this information's here. So lots and lots of specs to keep up with, but this lays it out in a nice, easy to manage layout. So definitely spend some time on this help place. If you're not that familiar with the products, you're just learning, tons of good info there. All right, so those are Gen 2 switches. So we can see, you know, again, some of this stuff has been coming out for a little while, but, you know, it is complementary, especially as you start talking about using the new UDM Pros with bigger and bigger capacities, bigger performance, the XG stuff, which has been out for a while, I don't get that, but we need to drive it with higher power switches. So this is where the Gen 2 stuff's really starting to take off, so on and so forth. So the next thing I want to talk about here, a couple of new UAPs, or Unify Access Points. So whenever you see UAP, that really stands for Unify Access Point, pretty easy to keep up with. And generally, not always, but generally the naming sort of nomenclature is going to be UAP dash something, right? So let's take a look at this one. This is the Flex HD, right? It's called Flex because this device is very flexible about where you mount this. So let's step back just a second here. So from a tech perspective and in an ideal world, you would always be using, you know, nice high-powered Unify access points mounted in the ceiling in perfect locations. And they'll be directly overhead, sending out that pattern out and down, giving you full coverage area, you know, the way you would ideally like to see this done. In this ideal world, no one cares what things look like on the ceilings. There's always low available ceilings. It's very, very easy to run wires to these spots, right? Well, if you live in this fantasy land, then that's true, right? Unfortunately, the real world doesn't always dictate that. So what they've started working on now are coming up with some alternatives and different ways of deploying Unify access points where you can't get a nice ceiling hang. So especially once you get into some sort of modern, you know, office spaces are very much design focused, especially if you're doing residential and high-end residential, the look and feel of this stuff is really important to people. So they've got some new options here. So let's talk about that right now. So like I said, the first one they're doing is this Flex HD. In terms of AP performance, you know, it is in line with their current generation of what they're doing. They're 8211 AC, Wave 2, so you got your 4x4, you've got your multi-user MIMO for high power performance. Your multipath and everything is handled so much better. Dual band, so still supports with the 2.4 interface. 802.11n 2.4 interface supports older generation devices or devices that have 2 gig interfaces only. Still supports that, but what they're really pushing here is a modern sort of discrete design. So if you compare it to this funky Euro Coke can here, what you'll see is that this is tall and it's skinny and it's a very nice and neat package. And they do this because it gives you a lot of flexibility in where you can place this and have it standing out, but not causing an eyesore. So again, we are going to go, oops, you're going to go to the wrong page first, and then I want to go here. Because I've got a nice little site where they show you some of these cool pictures. Boop. All right, so now, granted, most places don't look this sterile, but you get the idea. So you can centrally place them. You can place them here, tables if you have to. You can mount them back behind things, so on and so forth. You can run them as mesh points and do wireless mesh repeating, or ideally you're going to feed them with a cable if you can to get your better speeds. They've got some various mounting options. There's a desktop mount where it can stand straight up. It's got a little wall mount that you can mount it on the wall somewhere. Pole mount, again, these are for indoor users, but if you got a little pole thing inside, there is an optional ceiling mount which kind of really hides it away a lot. So it only shows about 5 centimeters down from there. So again, it's still going to plug in via switch to, or by wire to your switch. It's going to act as a standard UAP like you're all commonly used to now. However, it's a much smaller, neater design. So we're seeing a lot of people wanting to use these in locations, for instance, so before these types of options were available and you had a place where, let's just say you couldn't put a regular UAP AC HD or Nano HD or SHD or regular UAP AC Pro, you get the idea, right? One of the rounder ceiling mount devices. Let's say you couldn't mount it there. They didn't want to look at it on the ceiling because it's a really nice residential kind of deal, or the ceilings are way too high, or there's no good placement, or so on and so forth. You're either having to do less than optimal wall placements. Then came the the N-Walls. The N-Wall is a fantastic platform. I'm a big fan of the N-Wall APs, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. They've been out for a while now. The one thing that you run into, though, with N-Wall APs is if you do have a structured cabling going to your jack, you run a cable, a lot of times where these wall jacks are less than optimally placed. So in this little instance here, if it'll hold still for a minute now, let's see, come on, go to the next one. Well, for instance, that wall jack might be behind this sofa, might be behind this cabinet, TV cabinet or something like that. In that case, that N-Wall AP is very nicely placed and it's going to look great, but it's going to be buried behind something, which means your TV case, your cabinets, your sofa is going to eat up a lot of RF energy. And that's going to be less than optimal for deployment. So really what they're doing here is saying, hey, we're going to make this really cool looking access point so it can be out in the area, but we're still able to get a cable in so we can both look good and be able to send signal out, which is really important. So that's the Flex HD. Pretty cool guy. That's been real popular in questions and stuff we've been getting lately. Now, for the next one, we are going to go to the UAP Beacon HD. So what's this? Again, 802.11 AC, multi-user NEMO, yada yada, dual band, yada yada. We're pretty much familiar with this concept. But it is meant as a wireless mesh hop type of device. So how this works is, this is a very slim and neat package, right? So it's very thin here, about ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch deep. And this is meant to plug directly into a wall jack. So you plug it in the wall jack. It comes with a replacement wall plate. So if, let's say, your plates are too big and it doesn't fit in there perfectly, it comes with a replacement wall plate that'll fit right in here. So this puppy mounts up on the wall jack wherever it's got power, and it'll do a wireless mesh hop up to another UAP or a UAP Dream Machine, okay? Or the UDM Pro doesn't have one, obviously, but any other UAP, current generation UAP, or the Dream Machine, it'll do a wireless mesh hop to it. Now, you're still able to pull several hundred megs of throughput through this, so it is really high performance, even though it is using mesh, because it has, that sort of high capacity AC wave 2 capacity built into it. So you wouldn't want to build a whole office like that. What you don't want to do is put up one access point and then put 20 beacons off of it, right? Like it would technically work, kind of a less than optimal design here. But the idea here is you're using these to fill in pockets where you don't have wires, where you can run a traditional UAP or flex or an in-wall or something like that and still be able to get service. So I did this at my house. And the reason is where my house is located or how it's laid out, the equipment room is kind of one end, and I've got coverage off the Dream Machine pretty much for the whole place, but outside on my deck, spend a lot of time out there hanging out, doing barbecues, so on and so forth. And the coverage are poor based on how the building's laid out or how the house is laid out. I've got a whole lot of metal and stuff, freezers and kitchen appliance rack and so on and so forth in that corner. So it's less than optimal. Now, ideally, I would run a wire from where my equipment closet / room is through the ceiling, down on the wires, hook it up, put in an in-wall AP perhaps, or put in the jack and put in a flex or something like that. However, I am lazy and I am clumsy, and if I go stomping through the ceiling, there's less than zero chance that I'm going to fall through there. So this fits really well into what I'm doing, because what I did was got my Dream Machine turned up, got it running, went and plugged this into the wall. The Dream Machine will automatically find this, and all I have to do is hit the one adopt button, hit provision, does its thing. Next thing I know, I've got a couple hundred megs of capacity sitting out on my porch. So really straightforward, really easy to use, really nice clean package, and super happy with it. So definitely something you want to check out. Again, wouldn't want to build out a whole massive build with it, but it works really well in partnership, especially with the Dream Machine, to give you a nice setup for these sort of residential types of builds. So there's that. Next, this is a cool little jobber. So what this is the Unify ULTE. It is basically redundant WAN over LTE. So let's say, for instance, if you've got a Dream Machine or you've got a Dream Machine Pro or one of the other USGs with dual WANs, then that's pretty straightforward to failover. But if you wanted to add, for instance, an LTE failover to it, you're either having to use one of your dual WAN spots or you're kind of stuck. So what Ubiquiti's done is they have developed a PoE-powered LTE-fed backup solution. And what you do is you take this, you plug it into your Unify network anywhere. Off one of the switches is PoE-powered, so it'll power and run off a switch. And it doesn't have to be plugged in the USG. It just has to be on one of the switches somewhere. Once it fires up and runs, then what it'll do is it actually builds a tunnel inside directly to the USG. And if your USG drops WAN, then it'll pick up and run off of this, okay? It's a very simple process. There's a couple of click-throughs you've got to do, but it works really, really well. So again, hold on. I've got clicky finger issues today. Boop. Sound effect doesn't come on the website. That comes for free. You're very welcome. So you can see here, it's got a external connector for RP SMA connector, which is kind of handy. So you can extend your range, PoE powered, so on and so forth. The data, so this is all backed and powered by AT&T. So right now it's available only in the US, but you've got some peak rates, you've got some costing rates. You can look through this. If you look at the data sheet gives you a run through kind of how this works and more of a schematic. You can see in this instance, they've got it plugged in here. It's tied into the switch, which isn't tied into your gateway. So it builds its own little tunnel through all this to your gateway to provide that secondary or failover WAN, and you're off to the races. So very straightforward type of deal, really neat application. Because it doesn't have to plug directly into the WAN, it can be anywhere on the network. It makes it easier to place it somewhere nice, next to a window where you've got good coverage, or somewhere in your building where you've got good coverage. So this is a really slick sort of solution. I got a nice little screen that tells you your signal bars and stuff like that. One other thing that I wanted to point out too, in this switch model comparison, sorry, I'm getting a little rambly. It's one of the downsides of not sticking to the slides. Again, in discussion here with all the different switch models, they've got this cool access point comparison chart. These PoE questions come out a lot. Again, lots of good info. Spend some time here. You can learn many, many things. Here's your AP comparison charts between all the families. You can see here the new Flex and the Beacon that we're talking about. You can see all the stats, features, sizes, all the specs and stuff here. Here's your XGs that you need, those power switches, specialty models, dream machines, so on and so forth. So again, they do a really good job of updating this. Tons of good info here. All right, last product that I want to talk about right now, which is good on time, I think, is the UBB, or the Unify Building to Building Bridge. So this is kind of a new idea from them. This is the first one of these that they've done. Ubiquiti has realized that there's a tons of people that are using the Unify platform, and for whatever reason, they've got to connect a couple buildings together, typically very short distance on the same campus. There's no wire in place, or they want a redundant path or something like that. Now, up until now, the answer is like, okay, well, here's some Air Max options. Have at it. Super easy to use, really high performance, so on and so forth. But it means you broke out of the unified management system. You took it out of that single pane control platform. So it'll work fantastically, but maybe not quite as optimal as it could. So what do? What do is they came up with a building-to-building bridge. And what it's using is, while it's not the same air fiber guts, it is similar in that it's using a 60 gig point-to-point link with 5 gig failover, and they've sold this as a pre-configured kit where you get the 2 radios, all the mounting parts, and everything else. The link is pre-configured. Okay, so you put it up, you aim it. It's got some really handy-dandy LED rings. These LED rings kind of go different colors when you're aiming it to tell you how you're dialed in. Get them online, get them linked, then you can go to your controller. Hit a dot from there, then they show up in your controller. You can see all their stats and everything. And it is very handy and easy to use. So this is a really neat sort of application. I think we're going to see a lot of this moving here in the near term. People looking for these types of things, whether they're connecting buildings together, or maybe they're making shots to connect cameras from outside to in. There's a lot of potential uses for that. Got another couple minutes, couple other things. And again, I'm getting a little rambly here, but a lot of what we're talking about here is the same way I like to talk about new folks to the system, the platform. There are a ton of products to keep up with, but Ubiquiti is very good about keeping all the information in the same defined spot. So you go to their main website, and they're like, here's what's cool, and here's what's new, and that's great. But if you're not keeping up, or it's hard to keep up, so much information is out there. A lot of times what I'll tell people to do is like, look, go to products. Go to products and look what's new. If you click on products, it shows you all the products they're currently offering. You can see here quite a few, right? But they have very handily-dandily broke them into families. So if I look at Unify, here's my Flex HD, here's all my standard HDs, right? Access points, my beacon that we were just talking about, the UBB kit. Routing and switching, here's my dream machines, but we can also see the current and everything. All the different switch models. Industrial switch is pretty new, not new enough that we consider it to be a part of this, but this has got some neat applications, and that it is heavy duty, temp rated, temp spec and stuff to run in outdoor enclosures or whatever. Can handle the heat, right, which is real important. It can handle the cold, which is also really important. So BT output power, nice sturdy deal, fanless operation. That's why it's so beefy looking, nice heat sink fans, so on and so forth. So I digress. So again, my point here is you go to the product family, you can go take a look, and go, hey, I don't know what this is. Skip over phones for now. There'll be more about that coming out in the near future. There's the smart power plug for Unified. That's a new product. There's a couple of other things rolling around there. So you get the idea, right? You got air fiber. Hey, here's our air fiber 60, so on and so forth. So anyways, we've been about 50 minutes here. I really don't want to take up any more of your time. Again, we've covered a lot of material here. I've gotten awfully rambly, but they're going to hand out the slides. So the links that are in there, you can look at. Again, go to that help site. Go to help.ub, or sorry, I'll probably be typing ubnt.com forever, right? Or help.ui.com. You go there, you click on the product families, all the help desk stuff is there, all the hardware stuff is there, easy to learn from. You go to the products page, figure everything else out from there. The information is there, right? So, but anyway, that's me. That's the end. If you have any questions, again, when this is done and we quit, Chad's going to kick up the thing. There'll be a survey of, hey, how was this? Which product family you're interested in? Put in your questions. It's all tied into your login and everything that you use to register. And then here in the very short term, you'll be contacted by one of our reps, answer your questions, and then you guys can run from there. So hope everyone has a good day, good week. Buy some of this cool new Ubiquiti stuff and have at it.